What's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. On this episode, we're going to be finishing up our 1969 Mustang Mach 1. We did our long tube headers last episode, which were a complete and total challenge. Doyle rules! Doyle rules! But we got it done. Got some nice slip fit collectors on there. Got our O2 hooked up for our Sniper EFI. So now we're going to be making our way out the back of the car. What we're gonna end up doing is we're gonna come straight out of these V-bands right here, and we're gonna put a X-pipe as close as we can to the engine. The reason why we're doing that is because of sound quality. The further you run your X-pipe down the exhaust system, it's going to change the tone. What we want is a really grunty, angry V8 sound, which is what you want out of like an old muscle car. So we're gonna put our X-pipe right here, right underneath the transmission snout, and then run true dual exhaust all the way back, right by this drive shaft. And these two cavities right here will be able to hold our polished Stainless Brothers mufflers. Now, once we get all the way to the back, we have our Ridetech 4-link system. The problem is the 3-inch exhaust is gonna be a little tricky coming through here, so it's gonna take some different finagling to get that through. So for now, we're just gonna try to get our mufflers done, gonna get our hangers all set up, our X-pipe in, and then we're gonna start running our exhaust over the rear end. So as usual, we like to use Tycon, and they also have a company called Stainless Brothers. The Stainless Brothers mufflers are second to none, and then also we're finishing it out with some Tycon V-bands. These V-bands are great, they don't leak, they're not going to give us any issues at all. This should give us the perfect sound that we're looking for, especially when you're driving down the highway. You don't want too much and you don't want too little as far as your mufflers go, otherwise you'll get a drone. As you can see, they have all these really nice mandrel U-bends. I like using Stainless Brothers a lot for most of our exhaust work because in the mandrel bend, there's no pinch, there's no deform of any sort with their mandrel. It's nice and clean. What happens when you buy cheap bends, sometimes the mandrel gets wore out because the company or the provider doesn't want to buy new mandrels, and you get like these weird divots inside and kind of deforming of the bend. All right, so we have our up pipes in the position where we want them. What I like to do for an X-pipe setup is I'd like to get the legs kind of positioned where the X-pipe is gonna go. Because if you weld the X-pipe first and try to make it line up inside the car, it's gonna be really difficult. So from here, we can take our 45s from Stainless Brothers and just kind of lay them over the leg to be able to see exactly where they are gonna overlap each other. And what you want is maybe about a ½ inch overlap, just enough to get these to touch. And what's gonna happen is it's gonna equalize the pulses from the left and right bank of the headers. If you did a true dual system and you didn't put them together, it would sound more like a UPS truck. We don't want that. So we're going to go ahead and measure our legs and get the distance here so we know exactly where this needs to be. And then we're gonna scallop these sides and tack them together and then throw them in the car. All right, so we're making our way on the exhaust on the 69 Mustang. What we want to do is we want to hang our mufflers next. I have two straight sections that I have to run down the drive shaft. So I'm going to make this S out of a U-pipe first, and then make our turn downs back here with some hangers. Once we get it up here, we'll just measure between these 2 points to get our straight section. Otherwise, if I just start cutting straight, I'm not going to be able to get this where I want it. At that point, we can get a screw jack, pull the muffler up as high as we can, and figure out how we're gonna get some hangers, probably off these bolt points and these bolt points here. So let's go ahead and make this S section and get the muffler situated. Our S pattern all laid out for our mufflers. This is our passenger side and our driver's side. This is going to fit up in that cavity, and then it's just going to jog around that hump. That's the actual floor of the car. So we're going to go ahead and throw this up in the car right now and measure from this point to the X plate, and same on this side. We'll just cut our straights and try to weld everything up in the car best we can. Once we move back here, we'll make our hangers. We should be good to go. We got our passenger side muffler in place. We went ahead and tacked in 4 different positions so we didn't get any movement. So this side is pretty much all set, ready to be welded. So what we're gonna do right now is make our bracket to weld a hanger to the side of the muffler here. And we're gonna come off of these 2 bolts right here for the Rytec 4-link. This bracket is going to go ahead and bolt in there. And then come right off the center in between the 2 bolts, we're gonna have our 1/4-inch solid steel hanger that we're gonna weld on the side here. Once that's all set, we'll go over to the driver's side and repeat the process. All right, so the mufflers are all set. Hangers are tacked in place. We have our tips on. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and weld as much as we can on the car and use it as a fixture. Sometimes when you weld up stuff like this on the bench, it kind of has a tendency to move. The V-bands are only tacked in, so we're gonna go ahead and just weld these little sections here, just about 1 inch at a time, so there's not a lot of pull. We'll let it cool overnight, and then we'll pull the whole system out, final weld it, put it in, and then we'll get to start it up. All right, we have our X-pipe all welded up and it's cooling on the bench. So now we're gonna go ahead and weld up the hangers on the mufflers. These plates right here bolt right up to the side of the Rytec 4-link cradle. So we're repurposing the bolts there. So we're just gonna do a 1-inch stitch here, 1-inch stitch here, and that should be plenty for that. We're going with a solid mount on the muffler because the V-bands actually have a little bit of movement in them. On top of the fact that the V8 that's in the Mustang is solid mounted because that big block is just barely moving. So we're gonna get away with using some solid mounts. This does have a little bit of flex to it, but we don't want the exhaust to be sitting in there flopping away like that. Once the X-pipe is nice and cool, we'll be able to throw the exhaust in for the last time. Exhaust is all welded up. We have everything in place. Our V-band clamps are nice and tight. The clearance on the exhaust really worked out really nice. It's not as tucked as you might traditionally see on like a higher end hot rod, but this is not that application. This is more like a factory look. So our X-pipe is right where we want it to be. The 3-inch true dual should give it a really nice sound. And also these Stainless Brother mufflers have a really nice amount of fiberglass and packing, just enough to give it a really nice rumble and not be too loud or too quiet. We went with the turn downs behind the axle because the Rytec 4-link just didn't give us a lot of real estate to run the 3-inch up and over the axle. We could probably get away with it, but the vibration of the engine and the movement of the suspension system, we just rather keep it simple, have the turn downs back here, a nice muscle car feel for the 69 Mach 1. So now what we're gonna do is throw the starter back in, get that all buttoned up, and then we should be able to get this thing to the dyno. All right guys, so the exhaust is all settled. Now the moment of truth, we're gonna do the first startup on the car. Make sure there's no exhaust leaks. Sometimes with these big blocks and other variants, when you have individual flanges where the bolts are kind of like on top of each other, you have to go through, let it heat cycle, put another hand on it. So there might be a little bit of leaks. Cross our fingers, probably won't be, but let's see what it sounds like.
I have the coil wire unplugged, so I'm gonna prime it first, so just be aware.
Clear!
One eternity later.
We want to get oil flowing through the whole system before we crank it up.
Yeah, so this filter, guys, used to be on the bottom of the motor on the block, but we put the Rytec sway bar in there, and we had to move the filter up. It's also going to make it a lot easier for oil changes. So, are we ready to fire now?
Plug in the coil.
Yep. sounds so good. So good. Dude, the head is not leaking at all, Tim. That's awesome.
All right, yeah. Another one, Tim. Good job, buddy.
I mean, it's not too spicy, but it sounds, it definitely needs a cam, I think, to really wake it up. Give it another little rev. Oh, you're driving?
Yeah. Are you driving?
Oh, man. Let's hear that exhaust. Woo-wee. I like riding shotgun. It gives you better perspective. The manual shift, the 3-speed. Man, this thing sounds so nice. Long tube headers definitely made a big difference. If we had the regular old log manifolds on there, this thing would sound like a stinking lawnmower. How did I think of it? I've never actually ridden in a Mach 1. I feel like Nicolas Cage right now. It gets though, man. This car is not slow. I would drive this thing. I would drive the crap out of this.
I tell you what, you get a lot of looks.
Heck yeah. Well, that's it, buddy. This thing runs awesome. The exhaust sounds great. Thing gets, spins third, just rips the tires. Just a fun car to drive. This is just exactly what you want out of an old Mustang. Just runs perfect. Super stoked.
They sound really good, huh?
Yeah.
And they look great too.
Yeah. No frustration for me. Well, that's a wrap, guys, on this episode. We finally got the exhaust all situated. The tune is where it needs to be. We got this thing all sitting pretty with the Ride Tech suspension. The brakes are looking good. Man, this thing sounds so nice. Yeah, big block is current with those long tube headers. Fuel injection system is looking awesome. It's really idling nice. If you have any questions on the setup that we have on this Mustang or any other cars we have in the shop, go ahead and comment below. If you have any questions on where you get your hands on some Stainless Brothers material, I got that link in the description as well. Thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and we'll see you guys next time. See ya.